When I first sat down to make this video, it was going to be a list of games I was looking forward to this year. For some reason, I had it in my head that a lot of good games were coming out in 2024. Then I actually looked at a list of 2024 releases. Damn! In hindsight, I'm not sure why I thought it was a good year for gaming, but man, was I wrong. Most of these games are unknown to the general audience, and considering the extremely high development costs these days, we're going to be seeing a lot of flops and unfortunately even more studios closing their doors. There is one game coming out this year that I'm so excited for. I genuinely think it single-handedly made me think 2024 would be a good year for games. That game is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it shouldn't be surprising to anyone to hear that. I'll be the first to admit this game has its problems. The trend of big budget remakes is getting a bit out of hand, but given there's no other good games to play, give me Resident Evil 4 or Final Fantasy VII with modern day graphics any day.
What is so hard to understand about that?
There's also all the issues with Square Enix censoring the games. Some of the decisions I actually don't mind because I have no interest in seeing Cloud steal Tifa's panties. That's just plain weird, and I have no issue with them removing stuff like that. The issue is, once the floodgates are open, they never close, and they censored a lot of stuff in this game that they really shouldn't have. We first heard about this censorship crap when they said Tifa's chest was unrealistic and needed to be tightened, and then what remained needed to be covered up more. Again, anyone who lives in the real world and not a safe space fantasy land knows there are plenty of women who look like her, and some even have bigger chests than her. I guess the whole female empowerment thing goes right out the window for hot chicks. According to these morons, they should be ashamed of their bodies and cover up any cleavage they have.
Well, that sounds terrible.
It is terrible.
Now, to be clear, this series isn't the worst offender in the industry because at least the women are still attractive, even after they went through the dreaded process of being adapted for the modern audience. There are cases like Horizon Forbidden West or Suicide Squad or Spider-Man 2 that weren't so lucky and ended up being train wrecks by comparison. Now, those are the negative aspects, but like I said, I am extremely excited for this game because even with all that modern day crap, the Final Fantasy VII Remake was one of the best games I've played in years, and Rebirth looks to be on that level, if not better. Yes, it has issues, but the gameplay is engaging, the graphics are seriously impressive, and as someone who didn't play the original game, this story has me on the edge of my seat. I genuinely can't say enough good things about the plot so far. It's really one of the best stories I've seen in a very long time, whether we're talking about movies, video games, or TV shows. And like I mentioned before, compared to the massive amount of censorship in other games and the trend of ugly, borderline masculine looking female characters, this game actually came out the other side, still looking pretty damn good all things considered.
How's it even possible?
One of the best parts of the first Final Fantasy VII Remake was seeing male characters who are allowed to be badasses. They actually work with their female teammates and even save them at times, which feels illegal to see these days. No belittling the men or degrading them to build up the women like other games. Everyone played their part here and the team dynamic benefited massively from that. Yeah, it could have been better had they not censored it at all, but man, we've seen how bad it can get out there. At this point, it feels like a miracle to even have female characters who still look like women.
The only power I have is that I believe we can do better.
I'm probably playing Rebirth as you're watching this video, and hopefully I'll enjoy it as much as the previous remake because other than this game, there's absolutely nothing to look forward to. It's barely the end of February and this year has already seen its fair share of failures. WB is finally admitting that Suicide Squad was a flop, and how they didn't see that coming is beyond me. Ubisoft's big quadruple A $70 game Skull and Bones barely has any players either, and man, just another head scratcher. He basically took Assassin's Creed Black Flag, removed all the free roam open world and sword combat, then took the naval combat and dumbed it down to not even include basic things like building a fleet or crew management that a 10-year-old game had. Real mystery why no one is willing to pay $70 for all that good stuff.
Is this a joke? Is this a joke?
Then you have Sony, who just laid off 8% of their workforce because they're doing so well. They can go on and on about doing it for the future and how many copies Spider-Man sold, but the fact is they're spending so much damn money on these games, the amount they'd have to make to justify it sets them up for failure from the start. Apparently these idiots all thought the pandemic gaming boom would last, which just shows the level of intelligence we're dealing with here. To actually think people would be gaming as much now as they were when literally everything in the world was closed is pure delusion.
Is your idiot brain getting fucked by stupid?
Going through the list of releases, other than Final Fantasy Rebirth, what in God's name is supposed to get people excited? Honestly, Stellar Blade is the only other thing that gives me some hope, but considering it's a new IP, I'm very hesitant. I do respect the fact they seem to not give a singular fuck what all these liberal crybabies say about their attractive female characters. Hearing the director talk about how video games are supposed to be an idealized version of life because that's what entertainment should be is very encouraging. That, combined with the extremely impressive graphics and gameplay we've seen, has me hoping this game sells like crazy. And to be clear, I don't want it to succeed out of spite, I want it to succeed because we need more people with this mentality in charge of entertainment. And success here could lead to more people taking risks and going against these ugly modern day trends.
Is that allowed?
Yes, it's encouraged.
Other than that, there's not a single game that looks interesting. I've never even heard of most of these games, and the ones I have heard of look terrible. I've done a video on how awful Star Wars Outlaws looks, and it doesn't help that Ubisoft's image just keeps getting worse. Microsoft has a terrible track record with recent Xbox exclusives, so Avowed is clearly going to do as well as Redfall did. Again, nothing on this list immediately catches my eye or has any hype behind it, so failure is definitely on the horizon for most of these games. It makes sense why the gaming industry is so worried about 2024, because man, if I was a developer, I'd be shitting myself right now. This is going to be a very dark year for gaming. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the only game that has massive levels of excitement going for it, and while it has its issues, if it's anything like the previous game, it'll be a great sequel that lives up to all the expectations. There's some hope for a game like Stellar Blade, but it's also a brand new IP that has a lot of painkiller Twitter crybabies praying for its demise, since seeing an attractive female character implies not every woman is a land whale like them. Other than those two games, the list of 2024 releases is pathetic, and combined with all the layoffs and studios closing their doors, it looks like a really shitty year to be a fan of video games.